Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're diving deep right into Volume 7, Issue 4 of the Kennedy Assassination Chronicles.
Oh, this one's a good one.
It is. Think of it as, I don't know, a crash course
Okay.
on JFK conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
We're going to be going through academic articles, we've got conference reviews,
Right.
personal stories,
Exactly.
all shedding light on that day in Dallas.
It's a dense web of information.
It is.
You've got everything in here from, reports on intelligence agencies like the Foreign Intelligence Advisory Board,
Right.
the mysterious Army Intelligence Group 112th, and then, of course, analysis of Oswald's activities in Mexico City.
Okay, so let's kick things off with this November in Dallas conference review.
Yes.
The theme was, "You are the jury,"
Oh, I like that.
which I thought was super interesting.
Yeah.
Basically asking attendees to kind of put on their detective hats.
Right. Put yourself in that spot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what were some of the standout moments for you? What really stuck out?
Well, I mean, first of all, it was a really diverse range of speakers. You
Yeah.
had researchers, forensic experts, and even a former Marine Corps sniper weighing in on the evidence.
A sniper. Okay, now that's someone I want to hear from.
Right.
Tell me more about, some of the other experts.
So you had Dr. Donald Thomas. He's an entomologist.
Okay.
And he was presenting his analysis of the acoustic evidence, which is pretty groundbreaking stuff.
Wow.
His research actually supports the theory of a shot from the grassy knoll, which even made international headlines.
Oh, the grassy knoll, that always comes up, doesn't
That's
it?
always does.
Yeah. And the review also mentions a Dr. Crenshaw, who actually treated JFK in the emergency room.
Yes.
What was his take on the assassination?
Well, his book, JFK Conspiracy of Silence, openly challenges the Warren Commission's findings. So he was in Trauma Room 1, battling to save the president's life. And what he saw just didn't add up with the official story. He was pointing to the president's head and throat wounds and saying they looked like entry wounds, not exit wounds.
Right.
And if that's true, it means the shots came from the front, not the back,
Right.
which throws the whole lone gunman theory out the window.
Whoa, that's huge. Okay, so you've got this doctor on the scene challenging the medical evidence.
Absolutely.
And then there's this article about the Army Intelligence Group 112th.
Oh, yes.
What's the deal with them?
Well, imagine this.
Okay.
You have this Army Intelligence Unit, the 112th, and they're right there in Dallas during the assassination.
Good.
They're supposed to be, the experts gathering information.
Right.
But the article reveals that a lot of what they reported about Oswald was flat out wrong.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Interesting.
So were they incompetent? Or were they intentionally covering something up?
Ooh, very good question.
That's what makes this so intriguing.
Okay, so we've got these potentially shady intelligence reports. We've got a doctor questioning the medical evidence.
Now let's talk about Oswald's trip to Mexico City, just weeks before the assassination.
Yes.
It seems like, things always get a little mysterious south of the border, don't they?
Absolutely. The More Mexico Mysteries article really pulls back the curtain on what was going on there.
Okay.
And it examines evidence that there might have been a really sophisticated operation that was designed to make Oswald look guilty before the assassination even happened.
Okay, a potential setup.
Potentially. Yeah.
Tell me more.
Well, it delves into the tapes of Oswald's alleged calls to the Soviet embassy in Mexico City.
Right.
Which, have been shrouded in controversy for decades.
Totally.
What we know now is that the FBI listened to those tapes shortly after the assassination and realized the voice wasn't Oswald's.
Wait, they knew it wasn't Oswald?
Yeah, and instead of investigating further, this information was buried, adding yet another layer of intrigue to the story.
Why cover that up? That's a pretty big detail to just sweep under the rug.
It is, right. But remember, this was the Cold War.
Right. The CIA was running its own top-secret operation, tapping the Soviet embassy in Mexico City.
Okay.
So it seems their desire for secrecy may have overridden their responsibility to uncover the truth.
So you've got these intelligence agencies, they're operating in the shadows, they're potentially withholding crucial information.
Yeah.
And then there's this whole missing call thing, right?
Right.
What's the story with that?
The missing call is like something straight out of a spy novel.
I love it.
Multiple people, including the CIA's Mexico City station chief, remember a lengthy conversation between someone claiming to be Oswald and someone at the Soviet embassy.
Okay.
But this call was never officially documented.
So it just vanished.
Vanished into thin air.
Seriously, why go to all that trouble to, make a call disappear? What could they have possibly been talking about?
Well, that's the million-dollar question.
Right.
Was it genuine, or was it carefully constructed to frame Oswald?
Wow.
The article dives into various theories,
Yeah.
and it's a real rabbit hole of speculation. Okay, this is wild. So we've got potentially doctored medical evidence.
Uh-huh.
We've got intelligence agencies playing cloak and dagger.
Yeah.
And we've got a disappearing phone call.
It's a lot to take in.
This is getting intense. Where do we even go from here?
Well, there's a lot more to unpack. The article also dives into the curious case of Pedro Gutierrez Valencia.
Okay.
He was a credit examiner,
Okay.
but also a CIA informant.
A CIA informant.
Who claimed to have seen Oswald at the Cuban embassy just weeks before the assassination.
Hold on. The CIA's own informant is saying he saw Oswald.
Yeah, and not just saw him. He alleged that Oswald was receiving money from a Cuban official.
What?
While they were arguing about Castro, Cuba, and get this, Kennedy.
He saw Oswald with the Cubans talking about Kennedy. That's explosive. What do they do with that information?
You'd think they'd be all over that, right? But, as the article explains, the Warren Commission, who were already fixated on the lone gunman theory, practically ignored Gutierrez Valencia's story.
They had a witness who claimed to see Oswald with the Cubans talking about Kennedy, and they basically dismissed it. This is like a real-life conspiracy thriller.
It really is. It seems like every time we turn a corner, there's another layer of intrigue waiting to be uncovered.
Okay, I need to take a moment to process all this. We've covered a lot of ground, from a doctor challenging the official medical evidence to intelligence agencies potentially playing fast and loose with the truth.
Yeah.
And this is just the tip of the iceberg. When we come back, we'll dive deeper into the specific details and evidence presented in these sources. Stay tuned, because things are about to get even more fascinating.
Definitely. Welcome back to our deep dive into the JFK Assassination Chronicles.
Oh man, my brain is still spinning from all that stuff we talked about in the last part.
I know, right?
But before we went off the rails into CIA informants and disappearing phone calls,
Right.
we were talking about that Army intelligence unit, the 112.
Oh, yes.
And their, shall we say, questionable reports on Lee Harvey Oswald. It's just, like, I don't get it.
I know.
How can an intelligence unit be so wrong about someone like Oswald? Especially, in the heat of the moment when everything is happening.
It's a real head-scratcher.
It is.
But what's so fascinating is that we actually have access to these, what they call spot reports.
Okay.
Think of them like real-time intel updates that were being sent from the 112th in Dallas to their headquarters in San Antonio.
So, like, text messages between spies.
Basically. Like a running commentary of what they're seeing and hearing about Oswald.
Oh, I bet those are juicy.
They are. And what's even juicier is the fact that they were often inaccurate or incomplete.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So was it just incompetence?
Yeah. Or were they intentionally trying to mislead investigators?
Ooh, good question.
That's where the mystery lies.
Were they protecting their sources?
Possibly.
Or maybe even, like, hiding some of their own activities?
Could be, yeah.
That's like spy versus spy.
Exactly. The article explores several possibilities. One theory is that they were trying to control the flow of information, maybe to protect their own operations.
Right.
Or maybe even to manipulate the investigation.
So they're playing chess?
Yeah.
While everyone else is playing checkers.
Right. And it gets even wilder.
Okay, lay it on me.
So the article points out that Colonel Robert Jones, he was the intelligence officer for the 112th at the time.
Okay.
He claimed that initially he was only given the name Heidel as the suspected assassin.
Heidel.
Yeah.
Not Oswald.
Nope, no mention of Oswald.
But wouldn't they, wouldn't an intelligence unit be the first to know about, aliases and fake IDs and stuff?
You would think, right. But according to Colonel Jones, he was able to use the 112th's existing files on Oswald to connect the dots and inform the Dallas police that Heidel was, in fact, Lee Harvey Oswald.
Okay, so they figured it out eventually.
Eventually, yeah.
But then why are there so many conflicting reports about what the police knew and when they knew it? It's like everyone's got their own version of the story.
Exactly, and that's where things get really muddy.
Muddy indeed.
Some of the arresting officers claimed they knew about both names, the multiple IDs, the use of aliases right from the get-go.
Right, from the beginning.
Yeah, they even claimed that this information was transmitted by radio from the patrol car carrying Oswald.
But if the 112th was giving the police the right info, then where did all these conflicting reports come from?
Right. It's almost like someone was intentionally trying to create chaos and confusion.
It does feel that way.
Because when you check the radio transmission logs, there's no confirmation that those details were ever broadcast.
Really? It's like someone was whispering in everyone's ear. planting seeds of doubt, making sure the truth remained elusive.
Exactly.
Whoa, this is getting conspiratorial. Okay, so what about other information the 112 provided? Was anything else inaccurate or misleading?
Oh, plenty.
Give me the good stuff.
For instance, they initially reported that Oswald was carrying a Cuban defector card when he was arrested.
A Cuban defector card?
Yeah.
Seriously?
And get this.
Okay.
They even suggested he might be a member of the Communist Party USA.
Wait, Oswald? He was all about the Soviets, wasn't he?
Exactly.
That makes no sense.
It really doesn't.
Okay.
But we have to remember that the 112th was relying on information from their sources within the Dallas Police Department.
Okay.
So it's possible that someone within the DPD intentionally fed them false information.
Intentionally?
Yeah.
But why would they do that?
Well, that's the question, isn't it?
Was it some kind of rogue operation?
Possibly.
Or were they trying to steer the investigation in a particular direction?
Could be, yeah. The article explores some interesting possibilities.
Okay, like what?
One theory is that they might have been trying to create a narrative that would justify U.S. intervention in Cuba.
So, like, the assassination of the president could be used as an excuse to invade another country.
It's a terrifying thought, isn't it?
It is. Wow, it shows you how high the stakes were during the Cold War.
Absolutely.
Paranoia, suspicion.
Yeah.
Everyone's got their own agenda.
Everyone's got their secrets.
It's enough to make your head spin. Okay, I need to take a breather for a second.
Yeah.
Trying to follow all these twists and turns is like navigating a maze blindfolded.
It really is.
Speaking of secrets and conspiracies, the article mentions something called a stand-down order.
Oh, yes.
What's the story there?
This one's a doozy.
Yes,
Information comes from Colonel Fletcher Prouty,
Okay.
who was a liaison officer between the CIA and the Pentagon.
Right.
He claims that a member of the 316th Military Intelligence Detachment contacted him and said that they had been ordered to deploy in Dallas for the president's visit.
Okay.
But then, at the last minute, they were told to stand down.
Wait, so they were going to provide security for the president,
Yeah,
but then they were told not to.
that's what he claims.
Why would that happen? That's like leaving the front door wide open.
Exactly. And Colonel Prouty's theory is that this stand-down order came from high up in the chain of command.
Oh, man.
And that it was part of a larger conspiracy to leave the president vulnerable to an attack.
That's a bombshell. Did anyone investigate this?
They did.
Okay.
The Assassination Records Review Board, which was established in the 1990s to re-examine the JFK assassination, they interviewed Colonel Prouty extensively. They also spoke with Colonel Rudolph Reich,
Okay.
who was the commander of the 316th at the time.
Okay, so what did he say? Did he confirm the story?
Well, that's where things get even more complicated.
Oh, boy.
Colonel Reich completely denied the stand-down story.
You did?
Yeah, he insisted that his unit never provided protective service. They had no special training for that type of operation. And he even wrote a letter to the Army asking for advice on how to respond to these allegations.
Okay, so we have two totally different stories.
Right.
One guy says there was a stand-down order.
Yep.
The other guy denies it ever happened.
Yeah.
Who are we supposed to believe? It's like trying to solve a puzzle with half the pieces missing.
That's the challenge with this type of historical research.
Yeah.
You have to weigh the evidence, consider the credibility of the sources, and ultimately draw your own conclusions.
It's like being a juror in a trial.
Yeah,
But the stakes are way higher than just a regular courtroom drama.
absolutely.
We're talking about the assassination of a president.
A pivotal moment in American history.
That continues to haunt us to this day.
It does.
Okay, I need a minute to process all this.
Yeah, it's a lot.
We've gone from questionable intelligence reports to a potential stand-down order.
Uh-huh.
And it's clear we're just scratching the surface of this rabbit hole.
Yeah, it's deep.
Let's shift gears for a moment and revisit Oswald's trip to Mexico City.
Okay.
We talked about those mysterious tapes.
Yes.
The disappearing phone call.
Right.
But the More Mexico Mysteries article really digs deeper
It does.
and suggests there's even more to this story.
Absolutely.
What other juicy details did you unearth?
Well, the article emphasizes the importance of what they call the Oswald and Mexico City affair.
Okay.
This period, just a few weeks before the assassination, is crucial because it suggests that something more complex was at play than just a lone gunman acting on his own.
Oh, wait.
There's a very real possibility that there was a sophisticated operation in motion, and its aim was to frame Oswald for a crime he may not have committed.
The idea that someone was intentionally setting Oswald up,
Yeah.
That is mind-blowing.
It is. And the article dives deep into the CIA's involvement in all of this.
Right.
Their Mexico City station was obsessed with Oswald, and they were collecting information on him from every possible source imaginable.
Really? Like what?
Think telephone taps on the Soviet and Cuban embassies, human informants inside both embassies,
Wow.
and even secret surveillance operations.
They're going all out.
They were watching him like a hawk.
But if they were watching him that closely, shouldn't they have been able to stop it from happening?
That's the million-dollar question.
That is.
And it's one that has haunted researchers for decades.
Right.
The article doesn't provide a definitive answer,
Okay.
but it does raise some very serious questions about the CIA's role in all of this.
Like what?
Were they truly trying to prevent an assassination? Or were they playing a different game altogether?
Ooh, interesting.
It's a mystery.
Okay, let's circle back to those tapes of Oswald allegedly calling the Soviet embassy.
Right.
We already established that the FBI knew it wasn't Oswald's voice on the tapes.
Right.
Does the article shed any light on that?
It does.
Okay.
The article confirms that the FBI listened to those tapes very early in the morning on November 23rd, 1963.
Okay.
They knew immediately that the voice didn't belong to Oswald, and they even sent a cable to CIA Director Richard Helms confirming their findings.
So no doubt about it, they knew it wasn't Oswald.
Nope.
But they still chose to bury that information.
They did.
Why? Who made that decision?
That, unfortunately, remains a mystery.
Okay.
Some speculate that the CIA was behind the cover-up.
Oops.
They were running their own covert operation in Mexico City,
Right.
and revealing that they had misidentified Oswald on the tapes could have compromised their sources and methods.
Okay, so they didn't want to blow their own cover,
Right.
but it still seems wrong to, like, prioritize secrecy over finding out who killed the president.
It does, doesn't it?
I mean, shouldn't that have been the top priority?
You would think,
Right.
but the world of intelligence agencies is a murky one.
That's for sure.
And sometimes their priorities don't align with what we might consider common sense.
It's a whole different game.
It is.
Different rules.
Different objectives.
It's like they're playing chess
Yeah.
while everyone else is stumbling around in the dark.
Exactly.
Okay, and what about that missing call we talked about?
Oh, yeah.
The one that was never officially documented.
Right.
The article makes it sound like that's one of the biggest mysteries of the whole Mexico City thing.
It really is.
So we know that multiple people heard this call,
Including the station chief.
but it just vanished. It did.
Why? What could they have been talking about that would warrant erasing it from existence?
It's a mystery that continues to baffle researchers.
Right.
Some speculate that the call might have contained information that could have completely blown the lid off the Oswald in Mexico City narrative.
Interesting.
It's even possible that the call was intentionally fabricated to make Oswald look guilty.
Wait, so you're saying someone might have staged a phone call and then made it disappear?
It's a possibility.
That takes this whole conspiracy thing to a whole new level.
It does, doesn't it? And it raises serious questions about who might have been behind such an elaborate scheme and what their motivations might have been.
Yeah, like were they trying to frame Oswald?
Yeah.
Protect someone else? Or is there something even more sinister going on?
It's hard to say.
It's like peeling back layers of an onion.
Uh-huh.
And with each layer, we just uncover more questions.
More questions than answers.
It's making my head spin.
And just when you thought it couldn't get any crazier,
Okay.
we stumble upon the enigma of Pedro Gutierrez Valencia. Okay, remind me who that is.
He was a credit examiner,
Okay.
but also secretly working as a CIA informant.
Oh, right, the CIA informant.
And he claimed to have seen Oswald at the Cuban embassy in Mexico City just weeks before the assassination.
Hold on. They had an informant who saw Oswald at the Cuban embassy.
That's what he claimed.
That's huge. What did he see?
According to Gutierrez Valencia, he witnessed Oswald receiving money from a Cuban official
Okay.
while they were arguing about Castro, Cuba, and, get this, Kennedy.
He saw Oswald taking money from the Cubans and talking about Kennedy.
That's his story.
That's pretty incriminating. Did they take his claims seriously?
They did.
Okay.
The FBI interviewed him several times in early 1964,
Huh.
and his story became a significant part of the Warren Commission's investigation into Oswald's activities in Mexico City.
Okay, so if it was so significant, why haven't I heard of this guy?
That's a good question.
It's like he's been forgotten by history.
It seems that way, and that's where things take another strange turn.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
The article explains that Gutierrez Valencia's story was largely downplayed and dismissed by the Warren Commission.
They dismissed it.
Yeah, despite the fact that they never found any concrete evidence to discredit him.
Wait, so They had a witness who claimed to have seen Oswald taking money from the Cubans and discussing Kennedy,
Yeah.
and they just brushed it aside.
It seems that way.
Why? That doesn't make sense.
It does seem odd, right?
It does.
But the article suggests that the Warren Commission was already committed to the lone gunman theory.
Okay.
They weren't interested in any evidence that might contradict their narrative, no matter how credible it might be.
Wow. So they had this explosive information from their own informant?
Yeah.
And they chose to ignore it because it didn't fit their conclusion.
It's a possibility.
It's almost as if they were trying to protect a specific narrative,
right.
even if it meant sacrificing the truth.
That's what the article suggests.
This is mind-blowing. It's like we're uncovering a whole new level of conspiracy with every detail. And we haven't even talked about the medical evidence or the media's role in all of this.
You're right. There's still so much more to explore.
Okay, I need a moment to process everything.
Take your time.
We've gone from intelligence reports to a potential stand-down order, and we even met a CIA informant whose story was seemingly swept under the rug.
It's a lot to take in.
When we come back, we'll continue our exploration of the JFK Assassination Chronicles and dive into the medical evidence and the media's role in shaping the narrative.
Can't wait.
Welcome back to the deep dive. My head is still spinning from all the stuff we've talked about.
I know, right? It's a lot to process.
It is. But we're not done yet. We've got even more to unpack from the JFK Assassination Chronicles.
So much more.
Let's go back to someone we talked about earlier.
Okay.
Dr. Charles Crenshaw.
Oh, yes.
The doctor who treated JFK in the emergency room at Parkland Hospital.
Right there in the thick of it.
He wrote a book, JFK: Conspiracy of Silence.
It's a fascinating read.
And it really challenges the Warren Commission's findings.
It does.
Based on what he actually saw in the ER.
Yeah, he was in trauma room 1.
Right.
Battling to save the president's life.
And his observations just didn't line up with the official story.
No, they didn't. He pointed to the president's head and throat wounds and insisted that they looked like entry wounds.
Entry wounds.
Not exit wounds.
Which would mean...
The shots came from the front, not the back.
Which would completely contradict.
The lone gunman theory.
Did he try to tell the Warren Commission about this?
He did, but it seems like his voice was lost in the chaos and political pressure of the time.
So they silenced him.
In a way, yes.
That's pretty messed up.
It is, but Dr. Crenshaw was a man of conviction.
Good for him.
He refused to back down.
You love to see it.
He kept speaking out about what he saw.
It takes guts.
It does, and thankfully his persistence paid off. His book became a bestseller, and it brought his perspective to a much wider audience.
It's amazing how one person can have such a huge impact.
It really is.
Especially when they're going up against a system that's trying to silence them.
Exactly.
The truth has a way of coming out even when it's buried deep.
It does.
Speaking of truth and how it's presented, the conference review also talked about the role of the media in shaping the narrative of the assassination.
Yes, that's a crucial aspect of the story.
It is because it influences how the public understands what happened.
Absolutely.
So what did they have to say about the media?
Well, there was a panel discussion specifically focused on JFK and the media.
Makes sense.
It featured journalists, researchers, media critics, all offering their different takes.
Sounds like a lively discussion. What were some of the main points?
One thing they talked about was how the media, sometimes intentionally, sometimes unintentionally, played a role in shaping how people understood the assassination.
I can see that.
They mentioned how the initial reporting was incredibly chaotic and contradictory, with different news outlets reporting conflicting information.
It must have been really confusing at the time.
It was, even for the journalists.
Yeah.
And in that environment, it's easy to see how the official narrative could take hold.
Right, the one being pushed by the government.
Exactly.
So the media basically just became a mouthpiece for the government.
Not always, but sometimes, yes.
Okay.
They highlighted the pressure journalists were under to get the story out fast.
Sure.
And their reliance on official sources for information.
I bet.
That can definitely lead to a less critical approach.
Yeah, especially when you're dealing with something as sensitive as this.
Absolutely.
But surely some journalists questioned the official narrative.
Oh, absolutely. The panel acknowledged the courageous work of several journalists who did just that.
Yeah.
They challenged the Warren Commission's findings, investigated alternative theories, and kept the flame of truth burning. Their voices were often drowned out by the dominant narrative.
Wow, it's incredible how a narrative can just take hold so quickly.
The power of information control.
Yeah.
It's crucial to be critical consumers of information.
Totally agree.
question what we're being told.
Absolutely.
And seek out different perspectives.
Don't just accept things at face value.
Exactly.
Dig deeper, ask questions.
Form your own conclusions.
I think that's a really important lesson.
It is.
Not just for the JFK assassination.
But for everything.
There are no easy answers here.
Nope.
It's complicated.
It is.
We have conflicting evidence, unanswered questions.
We do.
The key is to stay curious, to stay skeptical, and to keep searching for the truth.
I couldn't agree more.
This issue of the Kennedy Assassination Chronicles has given us so much to think about.
It really has.
It makes us question everything we thought we knew about that day in Dallas.
Absolutely.
And it shows us that the search for truth is never really over.
It's an ongoing process.
This has been an incredible deep dive.
It has.
Controversial medical evidence, questionable intelligence reports, Cold War espionage, and we've seen how easily truth can be manipulated, how important it is to keep asking questions.
And remember, this is just a glimpse into the vast world of JFK assassination research.
Right.
There's so much more out there waiting to be discovered.
So, to our listeners, stay curious, keep digging, and never stop searching for the truth.
Exactly. Who knows what you might uncover?
That's a great place to end it. Thanks for joining us on this wild ride.